My name is Rabbi Shimon Cowan, and I'm one of a group of interfaith leaders who've gotten together in order to endorse, in some sense, a group of parties which stand for traditional values, important values, which are at risk in our society today. We're not actually pushing any one particular party. We want to present the public with a choice, but at least this group of parties have in common that they endorse certain fundamental values of our Judeo-Christian tradition. And today I'm pleased to speak with Vicky Jansen, who's the leader of the Australian Christians, to explore some of these and also to get a bit of a feeling for your party, how you understand your contribution to the values of our society, to the lacks of our society, and so on.
Great to be here. Thanks, Rabbi Cowan.
Thank you. Well, first of all, how do you understand the significance of the Judeo-Christian, or we could even call it an Abrahamic ethic in our society? And what do you think? What kind of strengthening does it need, in your view?
Well, I think that the Judeo-Christian ethic has been responsible for what I would call academic integrity, the pursuit of truth, and I think that truth and freedom are so closely aligned, and when we just want to impose ideological views on people, then that closes down, it closes down speech and thought and inquiry, and it just closes down society. So if we look anywhere around the world, where have we got freedom? Where do we have human rights? What we do discover is often the Judeo-Christian influence in those things. So I think it's very important that we recognise I will call the blessing of a Judeo-Christian influence in society. Certainly not about dictating religion. That's a far cry from anything we're hoping to do. We just want to be a positive influence, to be a voice for values, for life, for family and for freedom.
And that includes religious freedom, I presume, for all sincere believing people.
Exactly. Everybody should be free to their own beliefs, and it's only when those beliefs cross lines that impinge on other people's freedoms that then there has to be some measure of control. But really, we always, as a society, should err on the side of freedom. And there should, less laws would be better, more religious freedom would be better. Yeah.
Well, now, one issue which is very basic to society is the preservation of human life.
Yes.
And that life, there's life at various stages. There's pre-nascent life, there's the life of the terminally ill, and so on and so forth. Not everybody has exactly the same views on this, but I think that you would agree that the law which we have in Victoria relating to abortion on demand has been excessive. Is this your view?
Yes, absolutely. I believe it's totally excessive, and it's sending completely the wrong message. When we consider that children are being taught that they are a random accident with no purpose, sometimes even presented as a pollutant on the earth. If you're particularly environmental, some people go to the extreme where people are just, a pollutant. And then you add to that the fact that we can abort babies, unborn children up to full term in the state. I believe it's barbaric that we would even think about aborting the unborn, especially at that late stage. After 6 months, it's just unthinkable. And especially the manner in which it's done, literally pulled apart limb by limb without even any pain relief. We're actually giving animal fetuses pain relief when when they undergo that procedure, but not a human baby. And it just sends the message in society that life isn't important.
Well, that is certainly one. There were many amendments which were put up when this law was first came before the Victorian Parliament in 2008, and it's astonishing that all of the amendments were rejected.
Yes,
even those who were willing to see some circumstances in which abortion were accepted tried to fight for amendments which would at least make the law less radical than it was. I suppose one of the features which disturbs many people is the compulsion on doctors to either to perform or to facilitate by referral for an abortion, which is an abortion essentially on demand, without any reasons given.
Yes.
Now, some people rightly formulate this as an incursion against the freedom of religion and conscience of the doctor. But it struck me also, and I would like to hear your comment on this, that it also has it makes a very disturbing statement about life, because it's in its radicalness. The fact that we say that a person who does not want a child, not for reasons of danger to the mother's life or anything of that sort, but just because, let's say, it's a girl, or it's or for some reason like that, which is not really a grounds at all, can nevertheless force a doctor to comply.
Yes.
Now, it has struck me that that is saying that the life of a preborn fetus is essentially worthless, because where else do you find a concept of forcing? If a woman, for example, had a tumour, heaven forbid, in her body, well, a doctor who refused to do that would be negligent. But this is not a tumour. This is a child.
It's a child.
How
yes.
can we equate a child and a tumour to apply that degree of compulsion on a doctor? What do you think about that?
Well, the concept that struck me while you were talking is the idea that I read in the Herald Sun last year. I think it was Susie O'Brien wrote an article that it is better for unwanted children, unwanted pregnancies, to be aborted than to be unwanted. Now that struck me personally and philosophically, if you like, because I was one of those unwanted children, and my mother did want to abort me. And so what you're saying is that if you're not wanted, you're not a person. Now that's another terrible message, to send to society, that you're only valuable if you're wanted. The truth of the matter is that every person is valuable, and where there is life, there is hope. And even if someone is an unwanted child, and coming from the era of the sexual revolution, a lot of us are products of that. And we might have been unplanned and unwanted, but it's not irredeemable. Where there is life, there is hope. We might wipe out half of Australia if it was only the wanted children. It's a ridiculous concept, and I think that a lot of women suffer the post-trauma grief that is associated with abortion, especially later when they're going to have their own children, and they find it very difficult to bond with their children. Sometimes have difficulty having children, but the memory that what has been terminated is actually a human life. This is very difficult for women. Abortion is very hard on women, but it is also sending that message to society. But to your question about the doctor and his conscience, it is unthinkable that you should have to participate in something that you find so abhorrent. And even other, health professionals who you could have a 6-month pregnant nurse who has to be involved in a process like this. That would be terrible. That would be terrible. That would be traumatising. And I know that people who have worked in these clinics have had nightmares because of what they've seen, and realised, oh, it's not a blob of cells, it's a little person.
So this is something which is not only harmful for the life, it's harmful for society.
It's harmful for
the messages and the feelings and the values which it puts out there.
Yes, well, because my point would be that we have like 500 to 600 under 30s committing suicide every year. We have a problem with youth suicide. I know my son actually had a friend the other day whose girlfriend became pregnant, and he was trying to, tell him and talk to him about the importance of that life. And so the father of the baby was terribly convicted this was true, that, he didn't want the abortion, but he had no say. What we're creating is a whole lot of fatherless children, because they're fatherless before the law, because the law won't recognise the father. And after the girlfriend had the abortion, this young man was suicidal. He was suicidal because his child had been aborted against his will. Now, it has a huge impact, not just on women, not just on babies, on men, on families, on society. And it sends basically we're promoting a culture that doesn't value life. In fact, that condones death. So I just think it permeates through society.
Well, this is certainly. If society is not based on the protection of life, what is it based on?
Exactly.
This seems to be one of the most fundamental values. But let me ask you about something else, which is as big in a sense, and this is the area of human sexuality.
Yes.
Now we know, I'm sure we all believe that every human being is created in the image of God, deserves respect and care. Nevertheless, most people certainly coming from the Judeo-Christian, the Abrahamic faith traditions know that there's a norm of marriage, which is that of man and woman.
Yes, I
And
agree.
this is something which is, it's sort of a historical reality, it's a spiritual reality, and so on.
It's a biological reality.
As a biology, it has to do with human identity.
Mm.
Well, now, we see a situation where, under the dubious pretext of stopping the bullying of homosexually inclined children,
Yeah.
and of course nobody wants anybody to be bullied
No.
on any grounds whatsoever,
Not at all.
and it shouldn't be,
That's right.
shouldn't have it?
No.
But this is being used as a pretext to teach and to expose school children to homosexual lifestyles and to validate them.
Yes.
Now, we could stop bullying without that, but is there not a great worry that when you take children who are 12 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, 13, 14, and you teach them that homosexual lifestyles are as valid an option as any other, that you're actually interfering with their normal
Absolutely.
development?
I actually think this is reckless to call it education. It's absolutely reckless. You are actually promoting high-risk lifestyles. Teaching children that anal, oral and vaginal sex is all the same is actually, it's just not true. They don't have the same outcome. Without being crude, I mean, the anus is just not made for that. That's not its function. If we look at the biology of it, there is harm. But people aren't just bodies and orifices, and people are human beings with spirits. And nobody has considered the emotional, spiritual and the physical well-being of the children. It's also another area of conscience, because as a parent, there'll be a lot of parents that will just be horrified to think that they were being encouraged to sort of try a high-risk lifestyle, that especially statistics show that, I think it's 26% of under 13s are what we call gender confused, but only 2 to 3% settle into a homosexual or same-sex relationship lifestyle. And so that means the great majority sort of work their way through that and just, that follow their biology. There's some integrity there. So I think that, it's very reckless to be encouraging children to experiment, to come out. It's a cost to society, and this being imposed on children in school is also going to separate them from their parents if their parents don't have that view, because the message going out is that if you don't support this, you're a bigot or a homophobe. That's basically akin to racism now, that the language is